Welcome to the OC Hive Mind, everyone. I am your favorite hero, Victor, joined by everyone's favorite ginger, Sparky.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to our final round of Modern. We have Anthony and Calvin going on right now with Eldrazi Tron versus Blue-Red Control and some pregame interactions. Victor, talk about these.
Showing off the new Eldrazi Devourer of Destiny. Big fan of the card. Has a nice little trigger that you can reveal it from your opening hand, and then if you do, at the beginning of your first upkeep, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put one of those cards back on top of your library, and then you exile the rest. So, pretty cool in the Tron sphere to be able to kind of sculpt that top of the deck a little bit, kind of help smooth out those draws and enable that consistency that sometimes, especially when your sand's green, you kind of need.
Yeah, it looked like he put a Tron piece on top. Let's see if he does it again. I believe it was a mine, possibly?
It looks like we have Mine, One Ring, Swamp, and Thought-Knot Seer.
Yes.
Now, one thing to note, Sparky, it does exile. So putting those artifacts, the card's a little, it's a little rough to make that choice, especially when you're trusting without your lands, but you do get to get some of those artifacts back. So it's not necessarily a lost resource.
No, I agree with this. I think it works very well with how Karn works in the deck. You being able to buy stuff back from exile, like you just said. And just being able to filter and get those natural turn 3 Trons, to just outpace your opponent. I see Calvin starting off pretty slow. I don't think there's a lot of 2 drops you want to counterspell here, so I think playing the land tapped is a smart idea. It looks like he's got a couple, at least I see an Archmage's Charm, some amount of counterspells. These blue-red control decks have been definitely making me feel some type of way. But we have
Oh no, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I did get to play against Calvin's iteration of Control, which is on the YouTube, as you can all see me make fun of invert polarity, and then make me pay for it. But the deck's definitely got a lot of wheels to it. It kind of seems like a good spot for where the evolution of Murktide's going, especially with Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student, being an insane 1-drop in my mind.
Yes.
Definitely so concur. I do think Calvin has a lot of tools here in the matchup that will certainly make this an interesting matchup. What's Tron doing? Tron's casting big spells, and they've given blue-red the ability to say, I can either counter it or I get it. And that's a dangerous game.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Invert Polarity is one of these fun cards. I do think it's going to be a tough time when Calvin misses his 3rd land drop. And then we have another map from Anthony.
Yeah, certainly unfortunate there. Looks like he's going to play an Ambush Viper. Understandable, though. I think Calvin runs Flame of Anor, so maybe just trying to get that down so he can get some maximum value right away.
Yeah, fully agreeing. I think it's definitely a smart play. Just trying the best piece of removal is player removal, so getting him dead quick is a smart idea. Ooh, Anthony just drew a Karn. Let's see if he can get... he can make 5 mana here if he taps correctly. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
Taps the plant in the mine. I don't know if I would have done that, but hey,
yeah,
I'm not sure what his plan is here.
We definitely noticed the same thing. To my knowledge, I think the math is still the same. So maybe a little bit of some jitters.
Hold up here. He might get to use 5 mana this turn anyway. I think he was leaning towards casting this Thought-Knot Seer. Yeah, he doesn't lose any mana. So he's got 1 mana floating from the tower. From Calvin, I would have liked to see him pitch the 3-drop, the charm. I know it's his way to get back into the game, but it's also if you don't see a land here, you're kind of just off playing a 3-drop. Ooh. Main
Oof,
deck
hard
hate for
hit
the
there.
graveyard deck.
Listen, it's a great card. One generic and draws you cards.
Hey man, I'm for it. I don't like seeing it, but I mean you gotta applaud. The Eldrazi Tron decks have always been playing like main deck Chalice, main deck Relic.
All right, so a little bit of some cantripping, get a little bit of energy to go on to try to build up. Hopefully, he can find that third land because he's really hurting. Would you have now
Yes.
personally? I'm not a big control player, as everyone knows. It's not my forte, if you will.
You're our mid-range master, so we'll
Uh,
take we'll take everything we can get.
So, from my little experience in the control part of it, would you have played that subtlety knowing you're missing lands? Because if you think about it, right, you're losing two cards to get rid of the Thought Knot, which isn't there's no payoff to my knowledge in the deck where having the Eldrazi in play is so detrimental that it's not like it says that, oh, while you have an Eldrazi in play, do X effect with the spell. So do you think
So
it was
the
worth pitching those two cards?
the way that I look at it is he's trying to get his opponent dead right now. He's swinging with this Snapcaster Mage every turn, and that Eldrazi was a blocker. So Calvin got it out of the way, like I said. I would have liked to see him pitch the charm, because he could have he with the land that he eventually now drew, he could have like a snap bolt situation, maybe force his opponent to crack the relic early, or like tax his opponent's mana. But right now in the spot that he's in, like you have to be aggressive, and I think that was an aggressive line of play. You got to smell the blood in the water. And Anthony smells some blood in the water. My opponent has 3 lands, and I'm going to take away. My opponent has 4 permanents, and I'm going to take away 2 of them.
Yep,
And
that's
Calvin enters the scoop phase.
yeah, that's blood in the water right there. I mean, it was bound to happen, right? You missed too many land drops. Once you miss the second one at that point of that third land drop, you're probably not long for the world. Your opponent's hitting
Yeah.
his lands. You're hoping to scrounge something together, but I mean, cash triggers are brutal. It's the bane of every control player's existence.
Yes, fully agree. Coming from the control side, you basically just want to play a land and draw a card every turn and just keep passing the turn to your opponent, not taking any priority during your turn and doing stuff during their turn. That's the key to most control decks, unless you're like a tap out deck. And this deck is clearly not that. So I think not. I'm not saying that Calvin had a greedy keep. I don't think that was the truth at all. I think it was just more or less he got a little land screwed. This is the beginning of the new Modern Horizons 3 format. We have new modal DFC cards that can be lands. We're probably not sure how many lands we want to run with the amount of cantrips in the deck, because this is basically like a more controlling version of Murktide, right? So people have been cutting like the Ragavans for Tamios, running these more controlling spells, running extra counter spells. So at some point you have to like add more lands to your mana base to make sure you're hitting all your land drops, so you can get to 5 mana where you can Snapcaster, Flashback, Flame of Menor. The decks that are running 18 lands normally aren't getting to 5 mana as often. So that's one thing to think about, like deck building wise, moving forward. If I'm looking at Calvin's list right now that he posted, I see he had exactly 20 lands in the deck with no modal DFCs. So I would have liked to see that number closer to 22 if you're trying to be a control deck. But at the same time, uh, I also believe that like you can be in a good state because you just have banger after banger because the other 40 cards are all hits, right?
Calvin's going to tick down Narset and get that invert. Oh boy, that's killing me today. The
Invert polarity, baby. Let's see if Anthony's got any answer to the Narset. I like the line. Calvin has a counterspell in hand. He gets the invert. Oh. That's not something we like to see, but it's only 4 mana. Do we have a subtlety here? Okay. So I had a conversation with Calvin because I was doing coverage for that day, and I don't think he read Thought Not Seer or played with Thought Not Seer enough, and he thinks that if he kills the Thought Not Seer, he's going to get the card back, but that's not the truth. You
Oh, he's gonna
only
take a
you,
reread.
yep.
Everyone's gonna do a little refresher. Oh, wait, listen, reading the card is always a helpful
Explains the
thing to do.
card. Yes.
It explains the card, but it's never a bad thing to do. If you're ever, if you're ever playing and you don't
Yeah.
understand the card, please just read the whole thing. A lot of times it will explain the card. And listen, some situations come up. That's what, Scryfall and the Gather is for with the rulings. That's
No.
all there. So, use all the
Yeah.
resources you have whenever you're playing because it definitely helps. But yeah, I
We're-
don't think Calvin remembered that. But I mean, his hand wasn't going to allow him to do anything about it anyway. So it is what it is there.
that's fair. The only problem right now with what's going on with Calvin's hand is he wants to see lands, and Narset doesn't give you lands. It gives you non-land, non-creatures. So the strict serenade goes to the hand. He's got two strict serenades, a dress down, a counterspell, and the invert polarity. So I think he's looking for like the next big hit with the invert. But bad news for Calvin, Anthony doesn't have to play anything. He's got a 4/4 in play. Like he can just clock you with that and call it a day.
Yeah, I don't expect much commitment from Anthony going forward. Telegraphing a little bit that he doesn't have a lot of draw going on because if you have the One Ring, you're probably going to just swing at that Narset maybe, but also looking into a handful of counter spells, you're probably just going to have to sit back and just let everything go for now and make Calvin kind of be the one to make the first move because you already got underneath the counter spell, you got a threat on board, and
Just
you have Urza Saga.
for the players watching, just off screen in Calvin's hand, the last card that you can't see is that invert polarity. And he's got two cards face down that are unknowns. Obviously, they're not lands. And he's also taxed on red sources. He only has the Thundering Falls in play right now, so it's not like he can like bolt, galvanic discharge. Like he's being relatively taxed at the moment. Last turn, I would have liked to see him cast the dress down just to draw another card. Like I know you want to hold stuff up. The Eldrazi deck doesn't play on your turn very much. I know Kozilek's Command's one of the new cards, and it is an instant, but there's only a few cards they're going to cast on your turn. Calvin goes down to 11. Let's see if he fires off this dress down. He does.
Be a pretty bad beat. Not to, okay, sees the fourth land finally.
Dress down should be in the graveyard if it's his turn now, but
I believe that was.
or no. Yeah, you're right. It was end step, so at the beginning of his end step, it'll go away.
If I'm not mistaken.
Looks like a consign, a counterspell, and something else.
And just for
Another dress
watching at
down,
home,
actually.
well, that's a pretty good hit. But for everyone watching at home, especially with communication being key, make sure you understand that the dress down needs to go to the graveyard before you activate your saga. Because if you don't, it's still technically in play. Your token won't do anything. Now, there was a little bit of shortcutting there, and I'm sure Calvin understood Anthony's intent, but just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that.
Yeah, I don't think that was like a miss or anything. But we do have a consign. I honestly, with counterspell in hand, I would have liked to see this kicked. Like, because there's technically two triggers that could put on the stack, like the both of the Urza Sagas. But I guess you can't get both of them, right?
You can if Anthony had activated in response. You would have been able to snipe both. So maybe waiting would have been better. I don't know because I mean Anthony's not hitting Tron this turn anyway, so mana might be a little tight. So he might have opted not to. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
So. And Cavern of Souls to really dampen the rest of that hand.
Imagine if we could counter a trigger.
Calvin's going to flash in that dress down, I guess. Not very helpful against the cast trigger.
No, but it does kill the construct. Yeah.
All right, decent draw.
I think we want to look at what's in play when we're playing that
Oh,
subtlety.
there might be a misplay here.
And I think he just saw it. Ah, the oh no.
Uh, the eureka moment. Okay, are
Yes.
we?
I'm not sure. Yeah. I do kind of like keep Calvin on the play because his opponent does say it's okay.
Yeah, a little bit of a missequence there because
It's fine.
I don't think I don't know if he drew the salty off the dress down. I mean,
No,
it is
sure.
what it is. But listen, for everyone at home, make the mistakes when you're at your locals. That's when it sure does it sting. Yes, but it's better to make it here versus when you go to an RCQ. That's where it feels even worse. So,
Yep.
you know, don't worry about making mistakes. Learn from them. Speaking of
Ooh.
a nice little kind of top deck to make up for. Now of note, okay, yeah. Just want to make sure that Anthony put that back. So the card still stays exiled with the labyrinth. It doesn't go away.
Hmm.
It just doesn't have the ability to get it back. But um,
Listen, I love this line of play. The problem is, are you going to one? Do you have the cojones to go to one here? Ooh, Judge Sparky on the case. Thanks for the shout out, Calvin. We love you too. I'm out here keeping it real, keeping it legit.
is he commenting on your putting the Ulamog back underneath the labyrinth?
That and I also pointed out the dress down play to him as well. I was on top of my game this past week. One point of interest I would like to make out. I would have liked to see him invert polarity on the Devourer, and then if that doesn't work, then use the subtlety play. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a big beater. All right, he's gonna go to 7.
not a big fan of blocking the 6. But
He's got
oh,
to
and
throw out
here's
that.
and here's here's the big problem because if you can't block the 6/6, ooh, Darkwing Duck enters the battlefield. Yes, I watched it happen. Everybody gets a little sketchy when they make their first mistake to make sure they don't make their second. So I get it. I'm not sure if that's a Murktide or not. Ooh,
Ooh.
rough one for Calvin. Hate to see it, but stuff happens. It's like the first or second week that the cards are legal, so like I get it. But once again, we want to thank you all for joining us for this round of commentary for our final rounds. I've been Sparky. Say goodbye, Victor.
Goodbye, Victor.